Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Hodges, and I work in the Policy Office in the Division of Institution and Award Support at the National Science Foundation. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's session of the Fall 2024 NSF Virtual Grants Conference. I am now pleased to present this session, which will cover the Division of Financial Management. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to our session where we'll be discussing important information concerning NSF's post-award financial processes. We have a diverse agenda today that hopefully will be engaging to both new and veteran NSF grantees. Today, we will highlight some key areas across both the operations and monitoring sections of our team, update the community on some monitoring and reporting activities, and finally, spotlight our newest award monitoring courtesy notification. I would like to introduce both myself. I'm Justin Pohl, and I'm the branch chief of the Payments and Analytics branch, and I'm here with my colleague Naomi Jackson, who is the section chief of our Payments and Outreach section within our branch. I would like to share a bit about our organization and mission. Some of our longer standing grantees may have known us previously as the Cash Management branch. Our branch is under the Division of Financial Management, which sits under the Office of Budget, Finance, and Award Management, led by NSF Chief Financial Officer. Our organization is responsible for overseeing NSF's payment operations, which includes not only grants, but also contracts, travel, and other administrative payments across NSF. We are also responsible for financial outreach and engagement with our grantee community, as well as post-award financial monitoring activities, for which we work closely with our other sister divisions under the BFA organization. The Awardee Cash Management Service is our in-house grants payment system. Some of you may use ACMS in addition to other government-wide grant payment systems, such as HHS's Payment Management System or Treasury's ASAP. ACMS is a custom system and has been in operation for over 10 years now. And one of the advantages of ACMS that our grantees hopefully enjoy is that it requires disbursement requests at the individual award level, rather than drawing down a summary advance payment and reporting award level expenditures later, which is how our previous process had worked. As a result, we eliminated the collection of the SF 425 Federal Financial Report at NSF, but there are a few annual reporting initiatives that we require from our community to supplement some of the missing pieces. Specifically, our annual grant accrual validation, which typically kicks off in this current quarter of the fiscal year, and our program income reporting, which we will touch on later in the presentation. I also want to highlight our FAQ document, which provides a comprehensive overview of key topics related to grant payment operations and monitoring. So please check out our Payments and Analytics website for the FAQ document, which is available for download at this link. Our team puts a lot of work into grooming this FAQ annually as our business evolves, and we even use it internally as a one-stop shop reference for common inquiries that we receive from our financial research community. We anticipate releasing our FY 2025 version next quarter, but our FY 2024 version is available on our website now. So I encourage you all to download it, print it out, or bookmark the link, which doesn't change with the annual updates. I will now turn the time over to Naomi.
Thank you, Justin. I'm going to take a deeper dive into the payment operations side of our branch. We currently have a team of 5 staff members, which consist of grant accountants and financial management specialists who are dedicated to business support and payment processing. Those same 5 staff members have assigned portfolios of NSF grants based by state. Your respective points of contacts can be found on our external NSF PAB website, which is linked in the previous slide. Please reach out if you have any questions about payments, refunds, or other post-award financial processes. Furthermore, this slide depicts our grant payment process at a high level, which gives a timeline from when an NSF grantee submits an ACMS transaction to when NSF grantee receives the requested funds via Treasury. An ACMS transaction must be in certified status and submitted by 8 p.m. Eastern Time to be scheduled for next day processing. On the next business day, We then review all the ACMS drawdowns received from the previous night's batch to prepare a payment schedule for transmission to the Department of Treasury. Disbursements are typically scheduled for the next business day, which in turn, Treasury will process the disbursements to the NSF grantee bank accounts. One exception to this rule is if the total ACMS payments exceed $50 million for that day, then it will take 2 business days to process the disbursements into the grantee bank accounts. Furthermore, to meet Treasury cash forecasting requirements, the payments for large dollar schedules are dispersed 2 business days after transmission rather than 1 business day. This scenario is more common in peak periods such as our fourth quarter, year-end close payment rush, and such as in August and September and June, which is when many of our grantees' fiscal year ends. When requesting cash during these times, please account for this extra business day. On the next slide, I will discuss some of the best practices to minimize delays in receiving funds. Here are some common questions and reasons surrounding payment delays. The first most common question is, why is my payment delayed? This could be due to unnecessary remarks entered in the fields in ACMX. The next reason is because your SAM registration may be expired. There also may be situations where the funds were deposited, but you received less than what was expected. This is considered a partially accepted transaction, which I will go further on the next slide. Now on this slide, I will go into greater detail regarding delays in receiving payments. A common question we receive is, if the end-to-end process is 2 business days, why is it taking 3 or more days to receive funds from my payment request? One scenario is that some transactions require review and approval by one of our team members before the transaction can be released for payment. As I mentioned on the previous slide, this additional review can add additional time to process your request and may delay payment. You can avoid this additional NSF review by not making unnecessary entries in the remarks field of your transaction. The remarks field should only be used for communicating information directly to NSF staff. If you do wish to leave notes to help your organization identify the purpose of this transaction, please utilize the internal comments field instead. This field will not cause a delay in processing. Another example is when your organization has an expired SAM registration. NSF requires an active SAM registration because we disperse funds to the bank account provided within your organization's SAM record. Before requesting a payment transaction, please ensure your organization's SAM registration is active and up to date, including the banking data. NSF's financial system stops payments to any awardee with an expired or invalid SAM registration. Therefore, it is imperative to maintain an active and up-to-date SAM registration to avoid any delays. Next, I'm going to discuss why your payment received may have been less than what you have requested. In ACMS, your payment request may have a partially accepted status, which means 1 or more awards submitted for payment failed to post to our financial system. For example, if you requested a draw against 5 awards for a total of $125,000, and one of those awards with a payment request in the amount of $5,000 had an issue during the interface with our financial system, the payment you received would only be $120,000. More information on the failed award payment can be found in the error message contained on the transaction in ACMS, or by contacting your assigned payment specialist on our website. Once the issue is resolved, the payment can be requested again at a future date. The original transaction will not be automatically processed again. On this slide is just a reminder about our Treasury Offset Program, which is also known as TOPS, the most recent update. To give you a little background, the Department of Treasury established this program to settle unpaid government debts that an organization or an individual had. If an organization had an unpaid debt with a government agency, the debt was reported to TOPS, which in turn would result in payments being intercepted to settle the debt. Historically, this was disruptive for our NSF grantees, and we took the initiative and requested that the award payment related to the financial assistance awards, for example, grants and cooperative agreements, be exempted from the TOPS offset program. And as a result, NSF did receive approval from the Department of Treasury. This means NSF award-related payments will no longer be impacted by TOPS offset. Next, I'm going to talk about the post-award adjustment process, but I would like to go over a case study with you all just to benchmark your current knowledge. In this scenario, your organization recently received a late invoice from a vendor for cost that was incurred within the period of the award. However, after logging into ACMS, you find the award has been financially closed. Which is the best answer? A, in order to receive reimbursements for this expense, you must send a request to your Division of Grants Agreements grant official to reopen and extend the award. Or B, in order to receive reimbursement for this expense, you must submit an adjustment via ACMS, provide a justification for the adjustment, and maintain appropriate supporting documentation in the event this expense is audited or selected for additional advanced monitoring. The correct answer is B. The key reason is that the invoice is for an expense that was incurred during the award period. There is a common misconception on whether a financially closed award needs to be reopened to process additional reimbursements or whether an adjustment request will suffice. A request to reopen and extend the award is only required when new spending is needed. NSF will process and execute the financial closeout after 120 days of the award's end date. Please note, this process is automated, which deobligates any remaining funds from that award. This means the funds from the remaining balance are removed, so the award's budget matches the total final expenditures reported. After this 120 days closeout, NSF has an additional 14 months to submit an upward adjustment. This additional payment request will be paid from the remaining balance that is swept at the financial closeout. Again, the key takeaway I would like to reiterate is that the adjustment to the financially closed awards are permitted when reimbursements are expenses are incurred during the awards period of performance. Although adjustments are permitted, there are some limitations to be aware of. Payment transaction totals submitted via ACMS must be equal to or greater than 0. This means your institution must offset the return against an available award that requires payment. If an award is not available, the funds must be returned via one of our several other remittance options. Furthermore, there are additional restrictions enforced by our system. Adjustments against a closed award must be greater than or equal to plus or minus $1. Upward adjustments via ACMS, which is also known as additional payments, are available 14 months after the award is financially closed, or in some cases, a shorter period if the funding appropriation cancels prior to the end of the 14-month period. In most cases, this would translate to be 18 months past the end date of the award period of performance. However, downward adjustments via ACMS, also known as return of funds, are available until the funding appropriation cancels. ACMS eligibility will indicate whether the award is eligible when trying to submit an adjustment payment transaction in ACMS. We've talked a lot about money going out of NSF, but what about money being returned? If your organization needs to remit funds to NSF due to a positive cash on balance, the remittance can be completed in one of our 4 ways, using ACMS, pay.gov, credit gateway, or by check. As we discussed within ACMS, as long as your overall payment is net positive, you can submit a credit against an award as an offset to the current payment request. We cannot accept a net negative request through NSF across one or more awards. If ACMS is no longer an option for a particular award, submitting remittances to NSF electronically through pay.gov is strongly preferred. This allows remitters to make secure, electronic payments and decreases the processing time associated with receiving and processing a paper check. Check is our least preferred method. We experienced significant delays in processing manual checks during the pandemic and still occasionally experience delays. Further, there is an NSF government-wide shift to reduce paper checks as much as possible. We have received some feedback from some of our grantees on constraints that prevent their organization from using pay.gov. For example, if your organization is part of a state-managed treasury that does not allow ACH debit from your central bank account, we have been collaborating with the U.S. Department of Treasury on this specific scenario and how we can accommodate this common issue with those organizations still sending checks. There are newer platforms that have been successful with accommodating customers that have similar constraints. One of these platforms we deployed is called Credit Gateway. I will discuss this option in further details on the next slide. Credit Gateway is our new electronic remittance option. Last year, our team concluded a small pilot to test the feasibility of Credit Gateway for our customers. During the pilot, our team worked with a couple institutions who frequently remitters by check or had indicated to us their inability to use pay.gov. The pilot allowed us to better define our own business process and for us to better understand the experience of a grant recipient processing a Credit Gateway request with their bank. This option is now available to everyone. The goal is to reduce administrative burden and processing time for both the institution and NSF staff. If your institution is currently unable to use pay.gov, it is likely because pay.gov uses ACH debit. In contrast, Credit Gateway and ACH credit, so it's initiated by you, the institution. It cannot be done through an online portal like pay.gov, but needs to be processed directly with the institution's bank so that it is authorized and approved by the account owner. You may be asking yourself, what is the difference between ACH debit and ACH credit? An ACH debit transaction involves the receiver pulling money from the sender's account. In the example, the receiving organization is the initiator of the transfer of funds. An ACH credit transaction allows the sender to push money into different accounts, for example, online bill pay. In this scenario, the sender is authorizing the transaction directly with their own account. One final reminder, if you are using pay.gov for the first time, you may need to first contact your financial institution to whitelist NSF account to debit the remittance, which often needs special permission depending on the configuration of the account. The specific details needed is on this slide and also in our grant FAQ. Next, I'll be discussing the impacts of canceling appropriations. Each fiscal year, millions of dollars of obligated funds must be deobligated because federal appropriation cancels 5 years after their period of availability. Once these funds cancel, neither the awardee nor NSF can access any remaining funds. For fiscal year 2025, this means that any unspent appropriation from fiscal year 2019, which is October 1st of 2018 through September 30th of 2019, will be canceled by September 30th of 2025. Beginning in January of each year, we send email notifications to institutions that have awards with canceling funds. These emails continue monthly throughout September or until the award has been closed or fully liquidated. When reviewing your awards in ACMS, you can easily identify those awards because there will be a red flag next to the award number as shown here in the slide. Also, beginning in January, we send email notifications to institutions that have awards with canceling funds. Again, these emails continue monthly through September or until the award has been closed or fully liquidated. The award cash management service will be temporarily unavailable around 4 to 5 business days. Prior to the end of the fiscal year, awarded organizations will not have access to ACMS payment process during this period. This will allow NSF to finalize payments and reconcile its general ledger accounts. Our goal is to have ACMS available beginning on October 1st. No cost extensions past the canceling date will not be approved. If the award has multiple appropriations, the end date may be granted past the canceling date. However, only those funds not impacted by canceling appropriations will remain available. Usually, an institution is allowed 120 days to complete final financial activity prior to the award financially closing. This means that an award has up to 120 days to correct errors, post charges that were incurred before the end date, and address other closeout requirements such as special project reports. All payment activity must be completed by September 23rd of 2025 for awards whose appropriations are canceling. Any remaining funds for the award after the date belonging to the impacted funding appropriation will be deobligated and returned to the Department of Treasury. Please note, other non-financial reporting deadlines are not impacted. In some instances, an award might receive a no-cost extension past the date of canceling funds. This can happen if the award has received funding from multiple funding years. The later funds are not yet canceling, which is why the end date could extend past September 30th. Let's take a look at the specifics of this hypothetical scenario. A university is managing award 1912334, whose funds were initially obligated in fiscal year 2019. In addition, subsequent funding was received in FY22. The university also receives a no-cost extension for that award that extends the period of performance from May 31st of 2025 to May 31st of 2026. However, during the spring of 25, the university receives a letter from the NSF PAB branch Payments and Outreach section notifying the university that the award 1912334 has a canceling funds, which will cancel on September 30th of 2025. True or false? Should the university ignore the canceling fund notification email that was sent by the Payments and Analytics branch, thinking they must have made a mistake in sending this notification? False. Our notification emails will identify the portion of the awards funding that is canceling and this portion that will remain available starting October 1st. Let's take further look into this example. Let's say your organization received $250,000 upfront. The supplement that was received was a small amount of $25,000. The PI requested a no-cost extension because they had $100,000 remaining. The no-cost extension gets questions, and the PI might assume I may have until May 31st, 2026 to spend my remaining $100,000. In this scenario, they would only have until September 30th of 2025 to spend $75,000 of that remaining $100,000. After September 30th, the only portion that would remain available for the PI would be the supplement of the $25,000. This is a very common example that we experience every year, and know this can be quite surprising to the PI when they learn about this. This is why it's very important to communicate this information in numerous notifications to your organization. It's important to ignore these notifications that are sent to ACMS point of contact, and for them to be a liaison and communicate frequently with your PI. If you have questions, please ask your Cognizant Grant Accountant, our financial management specialist, and we're happy to explain. Let's take a look at the appropriation life cycle using the same award example that was funded by two appropriation sources. The initial FY19 funds were open and available for 2 years, from 2019 to 2020, which is highlighted in green. Then there are 5 years to liquidate through 2025. However, the supplement award had an open availability from 2022 to 2023, then 5 years to liquidate those funds through 2028. The no-cost extension that was granted does not extend the appropriation availability for the initial funding, which is shown and highlighted in red. Before I conclude with the impacts of canceling appropriations, let's go over one or more case scenarios regarding canceling funds and advance payments. A university was granted a no-cost extension through May 31st, 2026 for an award involving canceling funds. There is $100K available on the award, with $50,000 of canceling that are canceling on September 30th of 2025. The university estimates about $30K of the canceling funds will be spent by the end of September 2025 and would like to request advance payment of the canceling prior to the ACMS shutdown period. How much should their advance payments be for? Should it be for A, $0? Advance payments are not permitted. B, $30,000. Advance payments should be limited to the expected expenditure, or C, $50,000. Advance payments should include all the canceling funding so the PI can continue to spend. Before we go over the correct answer, organizations are cautioned against advancing remaining funds simply to expend remaining balances. In some circumstances, it would be appropriate to request an advance payment if there are known expenditures that have been incurred prior to the cancellation date. However, these invoices will be paid by your organization after the cancellation date. However, it is inappropriate to request advance payments of canceling funds simply to allow further expenditures to be incurred after the September 30th cancellation date, even if the project has been extended to permit further use of non-canceling funds. The use of canceling funds for expenditures incurred after the canceling date is not allowable. In general, advance payments to grantees must be limited to the minimum amount needed. The timing of advance payments must be in accordance with the actual immediate cash requirements of the grantee and carrying out the purpose of the approved program or project. The timing and the amount of advance payments must be as close as it is administratively practicable to the actual disbursements by grantee for direct program or project costs and the proportionate share of any allowable indirect costs, F&A. Therefore, the best answer is B. It is important to remember that the process for determining advance timing, the period of advance covers the amount requested, should be based on a justifiable estimation basis so it can be supported in the event of an audit. This now concludes the impacts of canceling appropriation section. I will now turn the presentation back over to Justin Pohl, where he'll be discussing award monitoring notifications and monitoring and reporting updates.
Thank you, Naomi. I want to start by discussing our final unliquidated balances of concern notification. We call it FUBs for short. An award qualifies for this notification when 50% or more of your award budget remains unspent and there is only 6 months or less left in its period of performance. The purpose of the notification is to bring these awards to your attention because your PI may be at risk of losing the remaining funds. We send these notifications out monthly to the ACMS points of contact at the organization and ask that they be the liaison for communicating with the PI and other organizational stakeholders. These large unliquidated balances could indicate there may be a problem completing the project or that there could be just unexpected delays. It is important to identify whether a no-cost extension may be required or if other discussions need to be had between the PI and the program official. Our latest post-award monitoring notification, which launched in 2023, involves awards which have not had payment activity for more than 12 months. We are referring to this notification as GNAP, or Grants with No ACMS Payments. When we launched this notification last year, there were over 1,000 awards that fell into this category, with 475 of them not having any ACMS payment activity since the award's inception. If you receive this notification, please review the award or awards and notify the appropriate PI, project director, and other project support staff. If there are program or performance issues, the PI should contact their NSF program officer or grants and agreements official as soon as possible. If the delay in activity is due to access issues with ACMS or a financial issue such as a payment or expenditure problem, please contact your assigned grant accountant. Here are some updated numbers for fiscal year 2025 as of November. You'll see here that we still have a total count of 828 awards that have had no payment activity within the last 12 months. And a subset of that, the 311 NSF awards, have had no activity since their inception. Next, I want to talk about a case scenario involving appropriate access of NSF systems. Consider this. After 20 years, Bob, who works in your office, is retiring. He has been the primary organization contact and expert for managing NSF awards, and this responsibility is now transitioning to you. You need to request a payment using ACMS. However, your management has not yet established a unique NSF user ID for yourself. What should you do? True or false? I can continue using Bob's NSF user ID and password to access NSF system because he left me a post-it note with that information written down. There's no need to bother anyone else with such a trivial request at this time. Well, the answer is false. Each user is required to have their own unique ID. You should never share an ID or password, and there should only be one account per user. Group user accounts and passwords are not permitted, and MFA is now required for each individual. To dive into that a little bit further, MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, was implemented as part of NSF's ongoing commitment to enhance security and safeguarding NSF's IT systems. The user accounts, as well as personal and scientific data. In today's environment, with the growing number and increasing sophistication of cyber threats, accessing systems with just a password alone is no longer enough. MFA will increase the security of the research.gov portal because even if one authentication method, such as a password, becomes compromised, unauthorized users will be unable to meet the second authentication requirement and will be prevented from accessing research.gov. Research.gov users likely already use MFA to access personal, financial, healthcare, social media, or other accounts. Accessing research.gov via MFA will be similar. While MFA adds an additional layer of security, phishing-resistant MFA is specifically intended to withstand phishing attacks by using authentication methods like a fingerprint or a security key that are harder for bad actors to exploit. For this reason, research.gov users with administrative or financial privileges must use a phishing-resistant MFA method to access research.gov. The research.gov system will enforce the MFA requirement for each user. This means that the system will recognize that a particular user has an administrative or financial role and will only allow the user to sign in if they are using a phishing-resistant MFA method. Likewise, the system will enforce the MFA level for users without administrative or financial roles, such as PIs and reviewers. Although users without an administrative or financial role can use a regular MFA method to sign in to research.gov, NSF strongly encourages all users to use a phishing-resistant MFA method. The ability to sign in to research.gov with NSF credentials, organization-issued credentials for users from in-common participating organizations, and login.gov has not changed. What has changed is adding MFA to research.gov sign-in. Enrollment for the MFA options in research.gov began on October 27th. This is for users signing into research.gov with their NSF-issued ID and password, or primary email address and password. In-common Federation users can continue to use their organization-issued credentials to sign in into research.gov if the participating organization requires MFA for systems access. The in-common organizations which participate with NSF are all aware of this change, and NSF has informed them that if they do not enforce MFA for system access on their side, their users will not be able to sign in to research.gov using their organization-issued credentials as of October 27th. These users will still be able to sign in to research.gov with their NSF credentials or can use login.gov. Users can continue to use login.gov to sign in to research.gov if a phishing-resistant MFA is used. All research.gov users must set up a primary MFA sign-in method to access research.gov. NSF urges users to also set up a secondary MFA method in case their primary MFA method is unavailable. So what can you do? We need you to support the MFA rollout. MFA is going to make it harder for bad actors to access your account inappropriately, but it's not foolproof. You should regularly review research.gov accounts to make sure that people only have the roles that are needed, and roles are removed from individuals who have left positions or left your organization. Remind your staff to report suspicious activity as soon as possible. If you do see anything suspicious, please let NSF know as soon as possible, and do the same for other agencies. You may not be aware of the potential impact, but it does have significant impacts when they are trying to access your organization's financial resources from NSF. Next, I want to transition into speaking about program income. I mentioned this is an annual reporting requirement that we need to collect from your organization as a result of eliminating the SF 425, the Federal Financial Report. Instead of collecting this on a quarterly basis, we collect this annually. The most recent submission was for activity that was earned and expended in FY 2024. The submission is typically due by November 15th of each year, so that reporting period has recently just ended. We are currently in the 91 percentile collection rate for this year, so if you still have an outstanding report, please submit it. For any reports that are not submitted come January, we will place an ACMS threshold on your organization restricting access to future payment requests until a report is submitted. If you would like to learn more about the program income submission process, we do have a webinar recording available on our webpage here. You might be asking yourself, what is program income? Program income is gross income earned by the awardee organization that is directly generated by a supported activity or earned as a result of the NSF funding. This would include things such as fees for services performed, the use or rental of real or personal property acquired under the grant, or the sale of commodities or items fabricated under the grant. Interest earned on advances of federal funds is not considered program income. Furthermore, program income does not include the revenue you received as reimbursement for award expenditures. So any payments that you request from ACMS are not considered program income. We also have other baseline monitoring activities that our branch is responsible for. These are intended to provide a broad coverage of the entire award portfolio. Some of these monitoring activities include automated ACMS payment screening, and we also perform a sampling of payment testing to identify whether any of the payments we've made in the prior year may be improper. We test the sampling to verify the reasonableness and the allowability of the selected award expenditures. So if your award is selected, it is important to respond to that sampling request and provide the appropriate supporting documentation so that we can verify the accuracy of the payments. I want to review one more case study with you before we end. A lot of you have the primary responsibility for being the frontline decision maker on whether it is appropriate to allow an expense to be charged to a grant. I want you to think to yourself here, which of these scenarios would you approve if they came across your desk? Do you have sufficient information to make an appropriate approval decision? So as an example, you receive a request to spend $12,000 for 2 computers and graphic cards that would be used to conduct specialized work on a 4-year grant. Or you receive a request to spend $3,500 to repair a centrifuge the team was using to conduct grant-related research funded by the NSF award. Or you receive a request to spend $27,000 for a wearable eye tracking unit that had been part of the original award's budget. The key takeaway of this case study is to have you think about when it's appropriate to ask for additional information or to ask follow-up questions. A lot of times, folks are not trying to be deceitful, but they may not give you all the information you need to make an appropriate decision. If something feels off to you, it's important to ask the appropriate follow-up questions. So let's say, for an example, you questioned or asked for more context or details for each of these three scenarios, and this is what you received. Would your decision on allowability change with this additional information? So as an example, the two computers would have only been used for a maximum of 6 days during the 4-year grant period. Would it be appropriate to charge the full cost of that $12,000? Or for the centrifuge, the repairs took place 1 day before the award's 4-year term ended. Plus the repair was for a general piece of laboratory equipment the university had used and would continue to use to benefit multiple other projects. Would that be justifiable as a direct charge? And then for the wearable eye tracking units, they hadn't been ordered, nor would they be received until after the grant ended. So could they really be used to support the grant? These are real-life recent audit findings of disallowed costs that somebody had approved, but later it was deemed unallowable. So I hope that's a helpful scenario for you to kind of think through. Again, it's important for you to think about if something seems off or it doesn't seem right, you should question it because it will probably seem off to someone else looking at it down the road. We're now going to open things up for questions. Please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for that wealth of information. I have quite a few questions already in the Q&A function for you all, so let's get started. First one, a PI delegated his ACMS certification responsibility or authority to an employee by replacing his emails in research.gov with hers. Is this okay?
Hopefully, I saw this question come in pretty early on in the session. Hopefully this was answered when we were covering the MFA and account user section of the presentation, but the answer would be, from the information I have, it would be no. Each user should have their own unique user ID where officially through the system, those roles could be delegated by the PI or the authorized organization representative, the admin user.
Okay, thank you. Our award is still active, but why does it show a canceling award flag next to an ACMS?
Would you like to take that, Naomi?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was trying to take myself off mute. So even though your award is still active and it may indicate a red flag in ACMS, it means that you may have appropriations that are canceled, and only those funds not impacted by the canceling appropriations will remain available.
Okay, another question. I believe I have a portion of funding that should have expired on September 30th, 2024, which is 7 years since appropriation. Should I have received a notice from NSF? Also, who at the organization is notified?
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, Justice.
Go ahead, Naomi.
So yes, they should have received a notification from our team. If they did not receive it, they can contact their cognizant accountant or grants management specialist. And what was the second part of the question?
Sorry. Who at the organization is notified of this cancel, when it's expired? Who gets notified?
So any of the preparers or certifieds that are indicated in ACMS, those are the ones that do get notified. And if they have not been notified, they can contact their cognizant accountant.
Yeah, I'll just add some clarity there, Naomi. It's actually the latest preparer and certifier who receives the notification. Some institutions will have a large number of ACMS preparers and certifiers, and we don't want to inundate 20 people with the same notification, so we utilize the latest preparer and certifier. And I would also add, if the funds that are impacted by canceling appropriations have been fully liquidated, that award will drop off from our notifications and it will no longer receive notifications. Or there might be cases where no year funding, so funding that lasts longer than the typical research funding, might have been used. So if you have a specific question regarding a specific award, it's best to go ahead and reach out to that Cognizant grant accountant with that award number, and we could look at the detailed specifics of that particular award.
Okay, thank you both. I had a login.gov account for a previous position using an institutional email that I no longer have access to. When I recently started at a new organization, I created a new account with my new email. Should I have tried to access my existing account instead?
So we don't administer login.gov. That is administered by GSA. I'm not quite sure what their practice is on changing email accounts on existing accounts, but it would be best to reach out to that help desk to find out if that's possible. Regarding research.gov, we prefer that you keep the existing account that you've established, even when you're changing from one institution to the next. That's why we allow for secondary email addresses to be associated with your research.gov profile. So if you can utilize maybe a personal email account that you'll continue to have access to even when you're shifting between one institution to another. But I do know if you have that issue with research.gov accounts, you can contact our help desk to walk through a process of associating a new email account with your research.gov profile.
And that's consistent with how login.gov does theirs as well. They prefer you use the same one or have it still under your profile instead of ending up with two different accounts. So it's the same idea. So as Justin said, reaching out to the help desk, they can assist you with that to marry them up. Okay, I've been unable to log into research.gov due to MFA issues. I've sent an email to customer service, but I still need assistance. What do I do? Or what do you recommend?
Yeah, so if you've submitted your request for support via email and you haven't received the response, I would suggest that you go ahead and give them a call. I do have to just manage some expectations. With the rollout of MFA, our help desk has dated by a number of requests way above and beyond their normal routine call volume. So things are taking a little bit longer to respond to, and there is a backlog. But we understand that logging in and performing actions is a high priority. So if you've sent an email requesting assistance, you haven't received the support that you're looking for, go ahead and give a call and just do it with a bit of patience because the call volume and the call wait times have been a little bit longer than normal.
Okay. Okay. Given the new multi-factor authentication requirements, it will be helpful if PI delegates could create or initiate proposals like NIH. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, that sounds like a maybe policy side of things.
Thanks, Justin. Well, we have been talking about that. He is correct. I should not have even asked that one, but no, he's correct. We have heard that from the community. We are discussing it. So thank you for adding to that as well. This is information we do take back and discuss within NSF to see if that's something we can have as a feature enhancement. Okay. I attempted to create the new MFA login, but was unsuccessful as I do not have access to fingerprinting. What do I do now?
So that sounds like you're a privileged user, and so the phishing-resistant MFA is required. I do believe there are other options beyond fingerprinting, so I would suggest contacting the help desk so you could describe the type of options that you do have access to, and they could help align you with the appropriate phishing-resistant MFA option that you can use.
There are still issues accessing the in common, as we have repeatedly requested updates to no avail yet. How long does it take to have accessibility through in commons to be resolved?
Yeah, so for an organization that is not currently enrolled in common, they have to go through a process with our help desk to get established. and there's usually some information that has to be exchanged between the institution and our help desk to verify some pieces of information, such as your organization's ability to, like your requirement to use MFA on your end. I do understand that that process does take a little bit of time, but that is outside of our purview. Following up with the help desk would be the appropriate course of action to find out where things stand.
Yes. And as Justin is saying, there's a lot of follow-up with the help desk, but as he's already mentioned, they really have been inundated. So we do request a bit of patience. We know everyone needs things to move in a hurry, and we do appreciate that. But we do have to at least warn that the help desk they are working on a lot of tickets coming in. So you may not get the response. That response time might be a little longer than usual, but it's not because they're ignoring you. So just a little plug for them. They really are working hard to resolve the issues as quickly and thoroughly as they can.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Income earned under the provisions of an indirect rate are not considered program income, correct? What if the activities or expenses are covered by CSA in general, but through the indirect process are recovering from non-CSA funds?
So I have to kind of interpret maybe what the ask is. That first part of the question, income earned under the provisions of an indirect cost rate. Let me translate that a little bit. Money that an institution is recovering through the charging or applying an indirect cost rate to the direct costs of the grant is exactly that. It's a recovery. I wouldn't really classify that as an income generating source. And so, any funds that your organization is recovering through the indirect cost rate application would not be considered program income. Program income is really if your research grant is performing some kind of activity that's generating outside sources of funding. Let's take a funded workshop as an example, where you're charging your attendees registration fees to help offset the costs because the NSF grant is not covering 100% of the expected costs. Those registration fees are expected to be treated as program income and reported on as such because there's certain terms and conditions that need to be applied to those funds and the expenditure of those funds as well. There are other types. Let's say NSF is funding a piece of equipment and that research grant is not using that piece of equipment 100% of the time. And it's very specialized. So maybe some non-federal entities, maybe some neighboring institutions have an interest in utilizing that piece of equipment. And your institution charges a fee for that usage time to offset some of the O&M costs of that piece of equipment. Those fees that are collected for the usage of that federally funded piece of equipment would be considered program income. So hopefully that adds a little clarity to that question. If not, feel free to reach out to us and we can try our best to get into the details.
Okay, thank you. Here's another one that is a little long. So our institution only allows the AOR to have the kind of role to edit in research.gov. As departmental administrators, we're struggling since the MFA implementation to assist with any of the award processes or requests on the post-award side. Is NSF considering adding an OAU type of role for post-award tasks?
So basically, your institution has a policy that is limiting if you are an AOR, that's the only type of role that you're going to be able to be granted. You're not allowed to have other post-award type of permissions. So NSF, we don't apply that limitation. That sounds like it's an institutional policy that your institution is applying to how they delegate and assign roles. We do not have the other authorized user concept for post-award activities. That's really used for supporting the proposal creation process. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but that's my understanding of how that's used. And since we don't have that, I would probably take it back to your management at your institution and discuss how that institutional policy could be adapted to better suit your business needs. in this case, but there's not necessarily something we could provide to help you bypass that.
Okay. Another one, this will likely be the last one as we're nearing the end here. Is the PI's NSF ID required to be linked to their current institution's email? I have a submission where the PI's email address reflected in the NSF ID is from her previous institution and not current. Will this have a negative impact on a submission?
It will not have a negative impact on the submission, but if the PI runs the risk, if they no longer have access to that email address, they may not be getting the notifications or reminders that they're supposed to be receiving as part of the process. So it's to their best interest to maintain and update current active email addresses that they have access to.
Correct. Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Justin, Sherry, Naomi, so much for all the information you provided, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Before we wrap up our session, I want to share that the Spring 2025 NSF Grants Conference will be in person, so save the dates for May 21 to 23, 2025, as we'll convene in New Orleans, Louisiana. For those unable to join us in person, don't worry, a virtual option also will be available. Thank you again, and we hope you have a wonderful day.